guys doing today? Thought we'd go ahead and get started. So for those who don't know me, my name is Steven Toulouse. I'm otherwise known by my internet nickname, which is Stepto. I pretty much only get called Steven when I'm at home and I've done something wrong. But I am formerly of Xbox. I was there for a long time, and then now I currently work for HBO. Please don't ask me when we're going to start selling to you directly. The only thing I'm allowed to say is that we do hear the feedback. I'm also a writer, and I'm fascinated by certain challenges that writers face in trying to create stories with believable characters and trying to create situations where those who might be a part of that world actually can say, oh, they got that right. Or, on the other side of that, oh, they got that wrong. And working for Microsoft and Xbox and a lot of other places that I've worked at, I've spent a lot more time saying, oh, they got that wrong, as I'm sure we all have seen different things in movies or stories or books that we've gone, that's not how hacking a computer works. IP addresses don't begin with 999 dot. So we've all had that moment, and so what we wanted to talk a little bit about today was something that I think is a super important topic for a variety of reasons. Number one is a good thing. The first is that more and more we're seeing in modern fiction, comics, video games, and movies the portrayal of female service members in our fiction, and that's great. That's great that that's happening. But at the same time, we're also seeing that sometimes it gets, as a lot of things do when we talk about gender roles, sexualized or fetishized, or there are other things that are going on that just aren't quite realistic. And what we wanted to do today was talk a little bit about that particular topic in writing those characters, resources that we think would be helpful for writers themselves to use, and the fact that service members are among us every day, and we just don't realize that they're there. They are typically sort of unsung heroes. We often see sometimes a commercial or a benefit or something like that where they're in uniform, but the vast majority of them are with us every single day, be that from the Coast Guard to the Marines to whatever branch of service. They're all around us. And the fact that female service members are now getting a larger voice and a larger portrayal, we thought it'd be fun to talk about that. So at this time, I'd like to go ahead and invite our guests to come up to sort of illustrate the point that they are all amongst us at any time. We have one more that's joining us. She's parked in her car right now. That's understandable. So we wanted to sort of kick it off with
my name is Anna Wisniewski. I'm a lieutenant in the United States Coast Guard. This August, I'll have been in 10 years, which is kind of depressing to think about. That's a long time. Real quick, one of my biggest pet peeves is that people forget the Coast Guard's the military. We are technically a branch of the armed services. No, we are not in the Department of Defense, and I could go into a whole long diatribe about posse comitatus and why that is. But basically what it comes down to is federal law. By staying out of the Department of Defense, the Coast Guard can actually do most of its missions. We board foreign flag vessels during peacetime. If the military does it, it's considered an act of war. If we do it, it's called being police. So it's a loophole, but it's there. Recently, I actually got snarky with Xbox Live because they...
What?
It happens. And it was because they had the armed services branches, and they had every branch but the Coast Guard. There was no Coast Guard avatar. So I might have thrown a temper tantrum about that. But I would say that the big thing to remember is that the Coast Guard exists, that we are actually technically an armed service.
Yes, and there's a lot of danger. I mean, the scenarios that we think about in the Coast Guard often are around rescue, but there's interdiction, there's all sorts of other dangerous scenarios.
Well, not as dangerous, but really cool is we send icebreakers down to Antarctica, which most people don't know about. We keep the U.S. Antarctic program running. And yeah, some of the most famous things people know us for are things like Hurricane Katrina, where the U.S. Coast Guard, which at any given time has about 39,000 members, during Hurricane Katrina we rescued 35,544 people. It was almost a 1-to-1 ratio. So we're big on search and rescue. Which brings me to my next question, Stepto. Why don't we have a Coast Guard video game yet?
I would love to have a Coast Guard video game. That's beyond my control.
Yeah, seriously. Hey guys, start writing in and try to get us a Coast Guard video game. It would be awesome, I promise.
Just out of curiosity, how are there writers or creators here in the audience today that may want to raise their hands? There, great, awesome, that's fantastic.
It's okay, we don't bite, I promise.
I know, it's okay. It's the thing is that we don't often realize the resources that are available in talking about portraying these characters. So the one thing I want to start off with is, like my particular favorite, you and I talk about this quite a bit because it's just so ludicrous, is the concept of, for lack of a better phrase, boob armor. And how ridiculous, now, so I read a ballistics study, we've talked about this, that actually determined that with female form-fitting armor, the way that bullets work kinetically, you're better off just not wearing the armor.
Yeah, it would basically, any bullet that hit you, instead of stopping, it would the boob armor would essentially transfer all of the pressure straight into your sternum, stopping your sternum and collapsing your lungs.
And yet,
yay, boob armor!
and yet it's the most common portrayal. But in realism, when we see actual service members,
let's just get right down to the underwear, okay? So in the military, when you're in the field, no joke, there's regulations on what underwear we're allowed to wear. Women are not supposed to. Now, mind you, we still do it. We're not actually supposed to wear underwire, and the reason being is when you're in a high heat environment, that metal can conduct the heat to your skin, and underwire bras tend to melt. So we're actually supposed to be wearing sports bras. There you go. There's your magic tip. This is probably the most magical thing you've learned at Emerald City. And that, you know, military women, when we're in our tactical gear, that's not what we have to be very careful what we're wearing. Tactical gear isn't comfortable for anybody,
right?
Frankly.
Right.
But recently, with
it's not meant to be stylish.
No.
It's meant to save your life. Yeah.
Can you tell
okay,
we
that
talked
was weird.
about this a lot? And we're sober this time.
I know.
So the thing is that when you see these portrayals of women in this boob armor, first of all, it's just, okay, now I understand that saying it's unrealistic is silly considering we're talking about movies where people fly in tights. I got it. Or, you know, mechs and all that. But the problem is boob armor takes the whole unrealism and it transfers it into sexualizing a very proud profession. And the first game I saw, video game I saw, to get the women's armor right was actually Halo.
Yes.
The women Spartans, when they have their helmets on, you can't tell. Their waists aren't tiny, you know, and frankly, let's be honest, all the Master Chiefs look like they have boobs. Look at the way that armor is. I mean, everyone has boobs. So it's not boob specific. But the thing is, I actually just met the concept designer on my way here. I found the first Coast Guard futuristic concept art I've ever seen.
Really?
Yeah, I think Brandy has it.
Awesome.
Oh,
wow.
It's a spaceship done in Coast Guard colors. That I literally
Oh, that's almost
cried.
like a Chris Foss design. I love it. That's great.
I think it's Isaac's.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So Isaac and I are talking, and he was talking about Kat, who was the first female Sentinel. And he talked about how, as he was doing research, he was really big on not wanting the female Sentinels to be sexualized because he knew that female service members were getting a little bent about this. And just because he doesn't like the idea of hypersexualizing characters. He also did not want her to become the automatic love interest, which is a common problem. You throw a military woman across all fiction. But military women, we tend to be depicted in very specific ways that can be damaging to the real life military women, which I'll get into in a second. What I thought was fascinating about what he said was he said that as he was doing his research, he read a lot of stories about veterans who had lost a limb and said that if there was actually bionic limbs that they could have, they would go back into the field in a heartbeat. And he said in that moment he realized he was going to give Kat a bionic limb because then visually, the moment you saw her, she was a veteran. She was a dedicated veteran who had come back. Instant respect. And almost impossible to sexualize her at that point because she's automatically a badass. And I thought, that's really, really well thought out. Then my second thought was, how sad is it that this poor designer had to blow off her limb so she wouldn't be sexualized? Like, it was brilliantly done, but what does it say when you got to lose a limb? Like, oh, okay.
It's tough. Like when you're trying to figure out defining characteristics of your characters, you tend to, unless you're really careful, you fall into traps. You fall into the easiest possible way of doing it. And so the way you differentiate, sadly, you know, it's just so common that the easiest way to say man versus woman is the boob armor scenario. Oh, that's instant. That's visual. But you put two real-life service members together who are in a combat situation, and they're indistinguishable from each other.
And that's where I would say Titanfall got it right. Titanfall, how many of you have played it? Raise hands. Okay.
Okay, more of you need to play it, because
Yeah.
it's awesome.
Someone's obsessed. Anyway, so the thing with them was I saw them at PAX, and I literally, you can ask my friends, started dancing in their booth when I saw the fact that, first of all, as I was standing back watching, I'm like, they either got it really right, because I can't tell which characters as they're running around with their weapons are women, or they didn't put women in at all.
No, I knowing Abby and the team that are there, I know that there was a concerted effort to sort of step back from. I mean, previously these guys had done Call of Duty, which is you know, a very
Call of Duty's going to run into trouble now that there's women on the front lines. I'm going to just straight out say that.
I think it's a very accurate statement. And watching them design Titanfall with that, like the characters are defined by them being people.
Yeah, and the thing is their uniforms are the same. When they're in their tactical gear, they're the same. And my favorite part of all is they don't have the wispy baby talk, sexy voice. No military woman talks like that.
When the female voice barks, prepare for Titanfall, you are ready for Titanfall.
Well, yeah, and so there's very little things that, you know, that are just minute details that are so beautiful if they're done right. Like the voice. A commanding voice from a military member is a commanding voice. You can tell when we're yelling at you. You can tell when we're talking. We're trained that way. We go through boot camp to learn how to, you know, well, yeah, to yell at people, let's be honest. But, so they got it right. And that's the thing is, it's so much easier to get it right than some people think. Now, for the writers, we'll talk about the resources
in a minute.
Yeah, so do you want to do resources now?
Yeah, no, let's go ahead. Yeah,
Let's
that's
just
fine.
roll into the resources.
Sure.
So what a lot of people don't know is that every branch of the armed service actually has what they call either their entertainment office or motion picture office. And those offices' entire job is to help you get it right. And unless you're actually asking to borrow one of our helicopters or boats, which movies very often do, yeah, that's why Battle for Los Angeles blew up a Coast Guard 378 at the beginning, was we didn't loan them a boat, so they decided to blow it up. CGI Coast
Someone
Guard
was
boat.
bitter.
Yeah, the producers were a little mad we didn't give them the boat they wanted. So if you watch the first 10 minutes of Battle for Los Angeles, the Coast Guard gets blown up. That's why.
You know, and the sad part is that's about as far as people can get in that movie. It's so bad.
Oh, make it a drinking game. Anyway, so the motion picture offices, what they can do for you is they can actually, you call them, you email them, you say, hey, I'm working on a story. I want to write about women, or hey, I want to write about gay characters in the military. I want to write about these things. They will either help you directly or they will connect you with someone who will be your resource for free. And a lot of people don't know that. And it's, you know, I've helped with different TV shows there. When I was down in California, I don't know where it is in progress now, but they were beginning to start a Coast Guard version of NCIS. And so I had some producers trail me around for a couple of days because they wanted to look at a command center and a female officer in a command center. And we'll answer your questions. Hit us up on Twitter, hit us up, you know, call us. We'll answer for you. And I think it's a valuable resource that and partially they need to change the name. Motion Picture Office is what the Coast Guard calls ours. They're not just motion pictures. They talk to comic books. They talk to video games, all of it, across the board. You see Legos that have Coast Guard on them, it went through the Motion Picture Office. So that's how that all works. And it's pretty easy to find. You just go on Google, type in Coast Guard Motion Picture or Navy Movies, Navy Movie Office, any of that, it'll all come up. And
So-
our Twitter handles are here too if you need us.
When you're watching, you know, something that is going to have a military plot line or something like that, like when you're like, I made the joke earlier just about like as comic book people and as science fiction people and as geek culture people, we often spot very quickly those things that aren't accurate, those things that aren't quite done right. What are the things that you see are the most common tropes? Besides, I think Boob Armor is kind of an easy target because it's so ridiculous.
That's so funny to say. Boob Armor is an easy target because frankly, if you were running
is an
around
easy
in Boob
target.
Armor, it would be an easy
It
target.
would be a very easy target.
So when it comes to our personalities, there's a couple tropes that come into play. And there's a reason why I was laughing this morning. I distinctively decided to wear a dress today. And the reason is because of the damn Green Lantern movie. Yeah, I know, silence. Everyone's like, don't admit you've ever seen that movie. Come on, you guys saw the movie. Here's the thing. Carol is a test fighter pilot. She flies a plane. She basically straps dynamite onto her butt, blows herself into the air, and prays she comes down in one piece, okay? She's a test pilot. But the moment you put her into a slinky little dress and heels at a dinner party, and the poo hits the fan, don't look at me like that, Zach. I'm doing really good about not swearing. I'm a sailor. Shh. So the thing is once you put her in a dress and you put her in heels and trouble shows up, she faints. Really? She'd be kicking off those heels and grabbing the bad guys by the throat. So why is it that a military woman, the moment she shows any sort of femininity, loses all of her power as an officer or as an enlisted member? Why does that happen? That's not cool. I'm no less an officer. You don't take the uniform off. I'm not wearing it right now, but I'm always wearing it. I took an oath. Just because I'm wearing Fluvog ridiculous red boots does not mean I'm any less of a badass and that I couldn't beat people up just as well as I can in my combat boots. And, you know, and that's a problem because it's a deep sexualization of the character that needs to go away. Now, where I would say there's a good example of where this was done correctly, Captain America, Carter. She shows up in that gorgeous red dress, and she is no less a professional, no less a badass for the rest of the movie. It's not hard. We can be more than one thing. So making us into weak just because we're women, once we're out of the uniform and we're designatedly female, then we're weak. Not cool. The other one that goes completely the other direction is the androgynous, evil, man-hating, ladder-climbing, I will eat my young woman. Oddly enough, there is a little bit of a stereotype like that in real life, that military officer females, we have something kind of unlatched in our head about our femininity, which I'd beg to differ. I have more makeup than any of my friends. I think I've gone really femme once I'm out of uniform. But the thing is like, you can't make us completely one-dimensional that way. It's not even two-dimensional. It's just this thing. And so you see, and we're always evil and incompetent. Let's add in incompetent.
Yeah.
When you get that high-ranking woman, she's almost always androgynous in who she is, and she's almost always a bitch. Okay, I swore. And she is almost always completely incompetent. That's kind of insulting. Because the women who have stuck it out to this point, who are admirals and generals, were the first official, they were the first officers. They came in '76 in the Coast Guard, and that was the first year we were allowed. Yeah.
I'm actually married to a military officer myself, and I went to a military wedding. Two of my honor guards were military officers, and one of them was one of the first women to ever be an admiral.
Yep.
And she was beautiful, she was intelligent, she was articulate, and she could take you apart.
It's part of our charm. Yeah. That actually makes me think of something we've done before. How many of you in this room are married to, related to someone in the military? Please raise your hand.
So, yeah.
Okay,
great.
how many of you, well, okay, how many of you are in? There we go. Now, keep the hands up. Hold on. We're going to do this. Now, married, related to, friends with. Look around the room.
Yeah.
Okay?
A lot of people.
So the reason this is important is because when we did a similar panel at PAX, I had someone in the gaming industry tell me that there aren't enough military women for this to be important.
Really? No, that was a real thing
Yeah.
someone told her.
And I wanted to look at him and say, you want to come outside and say that again, really quick? You're a scrawny little dude. I bet I can take you. I didn't. Instead, I worked on changing his mind. I sent him the statistics. I showed him how many of us there are. There's over 300,000 women serving in the U.S. military. And then when you look at our friends and family, we are the con, dude. So it's one of those things that I think a lot of people don't realize is important.
And it's the thing that bothers me the most, like trying to create stories. To me, the most interesting thing in the world is the thing that's not been told. Trivializing or using military service members, male or female, just as a point of drama, and then one-dimensionally doing so with female service members. To me, that's the story that's been told a bazillion times. Isn't it more interesting to play against type? It reminds me of something that Roger Ebert used to say towards the end of his life. He used to constantly point out whenever in a movie either a female character was marginalized simply to disagree or to not support the male character, like the wife who doesn't understand that the man just has to do his thing. And he would point that out in every movie because he's like, this is just such a trope. And I think it's gone down the road for military service members in a far worse way because it's such an important contribution.
Well, and let's actually talk about the other trope that's a lot more painful and a lot more difficult to talk about because it relates to a lot of the sexual assault going on in the military right now. Unfortunately, right now, for female superheroes, as well as female military members, a lot of what our motivator is, story-wise, is personal violence.
Right.
And it's a chicken and the egg thing. And I don't want to get too heavy into the sexual assault issues of the military. Trust me, that's a whole panel unto itself for a different con. But when you have the comic books and the movies and the stories being told about us showing that our motivation is from having been sexually assaulted, or when you're hypersexualizing our uniforms and making it into a fetish, or you're turning us into broken little girls who just need a good lay-in and then we'll be okay again, you know, what does that feed into our coworkers? What is that saying to the young enlisted who are coming in, who their first experience with a woman in uniform is something they saw in a movie? And now they have to answer to a female superior officer. So, I mean, it's a deeply important topic. For as lighthearted as I get about it and as many wisecracks as we make, it is an important thing to think about. As you're drawing those comics, before you put that boob armor on, remember that, like, we're mothers, we're sisters. We actually are putting our lives on the line daily out in the field. And if you've turned us into a sex object, and that's the way the mass media is representing us, you're stealing some of our authority and our ability to stay safe doing our job.
And I mean, even, you know, that being the paramount importance.
Yes.
The
Ha-ha,
secondary.
our Marine is here.
Excellent. The secondary level to that, to me, is like, as a writer, that is so much more of a story I would like for people to know about and I would like to get right than just trivializing it.
Hello. Sarah and I actually met in grad school. We're at the University of Washington's Communications Leadership Program. Well, you graduated.
Yes, I graduated.
I'm slow. Master of Communication Digital Media and a Master of Communication in Communities and Networks. And she's our Marine. You want to introduce yourself real quick?
Hi, there was Sounders traffic, and I got lost, but that's okay. Okay, my name is Sarah McCaffrey. I served 9 years in the Marine Corps. I was an aviation data analyst, a couple of years overseas, and I transitioned out in 2012, where I started at University of Washington. I finished my Master of Communication Digital Media, and immediately picked up with an MBA as well, because I'm a little crazy.
It's a military thing, this whole let's get as many masters as we can because
It's a collection. Got to get them all.
yeah, true.
I think that's about it. Is there any other part of the
No, we were
introduction?
we were just kind of going over like a lot of stuff we've always talked about ourselves.
So, I mean, one thing we
the
could
other differentiator, talk about your kids.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I have 2 daughters, which is pertinent to this discussion. Representations of servicewomen when I have daughters, you know, who have a mother who was a service member, and, you know, how that reflects on them, so.
Yeah, and wanting your kids to have, like, what was amazing was the first class we met, we probably should have been paying attention, but we were sitting in the back of the class talking to each other. And she said something that really rang true, because I'm third-generation Coast Guard on my dad's side, and I'm third-generation military on my mom's side. It's kind of the family thing. One person in every couple either is currently in or has been in. My brother's in the Air Force. Like I said, it's an issue. But being a kid growing up, wanting to see your parents in a good light, not necessarily a good light, but not a hypersexualized light. Like, we can't say that every movie about the military should be good, because let's be honest, the military, the government, everyone makes mistakes. So I'm not saying that every movie should be good, but I'd kind of like Sarah's daughters to see, you know, Marine women being the hard-charging badasses that they are.
Especially when there's like a dearth, right, of that role model to be shown, or to the extent that there is one, it falls into the categories you spoke about earlier, being broken, or you know, having a backstory that's...
How often we get asked, did you join the military because you couldn't do anything else?
Oh. Yes, I think, for example, my branch is the smallest of the branches, and women only make
In
up
the DoD,
still,
we're smaller.
in the DoD. Women only make up about 6.8% of the Marine Corps last time I checked.
Yeah.
So you have a small branch and even smaller subset within that branch, and representations of military women. I mean, who's to say that anyone has ever interacted with service members? Even my daughters, the odds that they'll interact with another female Marine, very slight. Well, except me and my mother, who was also a Marine. So what they hear secondhand from me, I can hope that they would prioritize that, but to pretend that pop culture and how that conversation begins around the images that we all see, to pretend that that isn't maybe louder or more,
Well, because then they become teenagers and mom doesn't know anything.
yes, yeah.
So-
and, I can't target the conversation as carefully as I would like.
Yeah. So I was asking Anne about some pet peeves that she had in modern portrayals, and there's some specific Coast Guard ones she had. I was wondering if you had some specific Marine ones you'd like to share.
One pet peeve is that I've never seen a female Marine in any comic or comic movie.
There's no coasties in any.
Very few. The only one I can think of is maybe if you want to call Space Marine, we can talk about Vasquez.
Space Marine, yeah.
Yeah.
But
I do
in
have a
Aliens.
couple pet peeves. One I know is a pet peeve a lot of people have with comics in particular. I looked at the Black Widow covers preparing for this and the poses.
Yes, the posing. Let's
Yes.
talk about this.
You
Spines
can't-
don't work that
You
way.
can't pose that way in armor. When I'm fully done up in my boarding officer gear, I'm lucky if I can like bend down and tie my shoes. Let alone turn so that my boobs are forward, my butt's forward, and I'm giving you a winning smile. If I'm in that position, I've probably fallen overboard, and there's a problem.
Provide assistance. I don't know if anyone caught the, this looks like a crowd that likes Katy Perry. She dressed up like a Marine in Part of Me, and the way she looks dressed in standard camouflage utilities is an honest portrayal, which kind of shocked me because it's not sexy at all. It's baggy.
Yeah.
The trousers were made for men, so it's not flattering, but it gets the job done. It's functional.
Speaking of the costume thing, I've seen a couple people wandering around the con in pieces of real uniforms. Please don't do that. Here's a couple reasons why. First of all, you do a full uniform, that's a federal offense. You're impersonating an officer. And I'm the kind of jerk who will call you out on it. But the other thing is that as someone who's lost friends, when I see someone walking past in a uniform made to look like a comic book character, but it's a legitimate military uniform, and you know what I'm talking about. Not the surplus knockoff stuff, but like legitimate with the flag and everything. And it's cut and it's burned and it's made to look like you've been in combat. One, that's deeply insulting. Two, you don't know who in this room might have PTSD. You don't know who really saw their buddy blown up. And you don't know those of us that are still mourning the loss of friends. So if you're going to do military cosplay, please be respectful in how you do it and make sure you're not like going and finding real uniforms. I know authenticity is awesome. But in this one case, remember that uniform means a lot to some people who've lost their lives in it. Sorry.
That's good.
That was my little anger rant today.
No,
So-
I agree. If I can add
No,
to that.
please.
Okay. It seems like it's really easy to be cynical, and about the military in particular, it's a bit of a different culture, and it's easy to think, well, this is just being precious about our uniforms. But I mean, the fact is, the first time you're allowed to put it on is usually an extremely meaningful moment in the lives of service members. So to see someone wear it casually or as a costume without permission, or the worst of all is to be wearing an article of our actual uniform and to be an embarrassment, to behave in a way that is obnoxious or violent. I mean, take your pick. To make a joke of it is,
It's hard.
it's not nice.
It's hard to watch. And the thing is there's so many rules that go around the uniform thing. And hey, guess what, cosplayers? You too can contact the motion picture office and find out what is allowed and what isn't. If you ever have a question about your military cosplay, ask a military member. We like to help. That's most of the reason why, like, I know every Coastie I know that joined the Coast Guard joined because we like to help. We're a rescue service. And the Marines and the Army and the Navy.
We don't like to help.
Okay, Okay, they blow up a lot more stuff than we do. I was gonna say they're good people too, not that they like to help. But it's a big deal.
So, yes, please.
What do you suggest, like, I mean, any
That's good.
you can call people for people who do have aspects of their costume or a majority of the costume that is something from this, that looks military, what do you suggest there?
Please leave off the flag. Here's a little trivia for you, because I'm just pumping out trivia today. So the flag we wear on our sleeves looks backwards to most people. And the reason it's in that position is because it's the position of bravery. Because when you're charging towards a battle, when you're running towards something, the flag flies that way with the stars leading. So when you wear that, that's a very big deal. Don't wear that. Please also don't wear full sets of ribbons. Specifically, don't wear anything that indicates you were wounded in battle. Make it up. Like, don't wear a real Purple Heart. Not cool. And I've seen it. And also, I personally, and this is just me, I prefer that you don't wear the U.S. Army, U.S. Coast Guard, U.S. So when you look at our battle dress uniforms or our operational dress uniform, they have usually U.S. Coast Guard on one side and then the name. Wear the name tag, but if you can leave off that one, that's a personal preference. But big thing, don't put on the flag.
For us, it's the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. The globe with the eagle.
Yeah.
On. Everyone has something. And in fact, everything on a uniform, from the medals, the ribbons, the insignia, everything means something, down to the stripes.
Know what it means? It's like you wouldn't get a tattoo in a language you didn't understand if you didn't know what it meant.
Well,
Okay, rephrase. You shouldn't. I wasn't going to bring that tattoo up, Steptoe. It can be removed.
that's terribly funny. So I think what fascinates me is that we know that people's intentions are good when they're cosplaying and they're putting on military. It's their way of showing that this is something that they value, that this is something that they see.
Well, actually, it means they value whatever game it came from.
Well,
not
that
the
and that
military
could
itself.
be. It depends on, I guess, the way the game treats
Yes.
the characters. And so, from that perspective, I think those individuals who do want to show their respect for the service would be more likely to want to get it right, but at the same time would also be receptive to the message of there's some things
I know
right
a
you
lot
shouldn't do.
of the cosplay forums, they usually have a military thread. Also, you can look at military.com. A lot of them, if you Google it, if you look it up, there's actually military web pages that actually give you guidance on what different things mean. And then, like I said, like for me, for example, if any of you were to tweet at me, say, hey, I'm putting together this costume, I personally would make the time to either help you walk through it myself, or if I was busy, I would I would get you to someone who would help you to make sure that you do it in a respectful way.
That's great advice. And if it is such a simple thing as to ask someone who has served in the military, which is 1% of the population in the U.S., or to Google it, to type the search term in, if that's all it takes, then is it
Yeah.
really honoring
And it's
the service if they
and
don't?
I guarantee you that if you walked up to someone that even like your grandparents, now your grandparents they might ask a lot of questions about what cosplay is, so maybe go a generation below that. But I would say that you could probably ask just about any military member, hey, I really want to do this cosplay. I want to do it respectfully. Can you give me a hand? And you know what? Most of them would probably then offer to buy you a beer because they were so astonished you asked and happy.
So when we think about, again, the writers that are seeking to portray these stories and these characters, that they want to have both be realistic and respectful, what would be the number one piece of advice beyond, of course, the resources that you mentioned, contacting that? It's just like, as I've mentioned as a writer, sometimes you just fall into the trap of, oh, this is a shortcut, and I have this other thing I have to put my brain on for the plot, so I'm going to take this shortcut, right? Sometimes as a writer you do that. What would be the number one piece of advice you would say about this specific topic about the treatment of women service members?
I would say I put some thought into this, and my number one problem trope is treating women in the service in comics and movies as a fish out of water type story. Because when I enlisted, it was, I can't even describe how well it suited my personality. It was the exact right thing for me to do, and that's just the way I am. It's not for everybody. And when I see older movies like Private Benjamin, oh, you could take your pick. There's There's several.
I
There are
was going to
some
say,
that
I'm
get it
not sure
right.
we can really
I
find
know,
one that isn't going to
pick
have
one,
some flavor.
it's all of them, you know?
Yeah.
And then even movies that try to make them sort of fit in, they do something like G.I. Jane, where she has to look like Demi Moore and her t-shirt has to be put on the cover. They don't pick someone who would actually be physically capable of SEAL training because that wouldn't look like Demi Moore.
No.
No. And they do things, you know, I mean, you could pick an example. It's pretty much all of them. When the fact is that actual women who join the service, I've never really seen a fish out of water in 9 years of women enlisting
You
in
see
the
them
Marine
in
Corps.
boot camp, and then they get over it.
And they drop out.
Yeah, or they
Or
drop out.
They
yeah.
either adjust or they drop
Which
out.
is the purpose of boot
Well,
camp.
and that's
Yeah.
the purpose of training. And that's the funny thing is like, what's funny is I have seen a couple fish out of water.
And the
And-
Coast Guard.
Ironically, I actually had 3 classmates in training who did not know how to swim.
Aw.
And so we spent extra time teaching them. It was a lot of fun. We weren't very nice. But the thing is the fish out of water thing is that when everyone goes into boot camp, there's not a single person who on some level isn't out of their comfort zone. Because that's the point of it. But once we put on that uniform, yeah, the fish out of water thing, not so much.
It's an acclamation either you make or you don't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you either make
And
it
so
or you say
the-
screw it, rage flip the table and run
And,
out
but,
of the room screaming.
and I wonder if too many of the stories are about taking that out of boot camp and putting it in some other scenario where it's not realistic at all.
Well, and and actually, let me broaden this a little more. I don't want, not just about women, but Don't Ask, Don't Tell has been repealed, thank goodness. And so now we can have openly gay service members. And I'm hoping that we continue to progress so that, you know, the whole binary sexuality thing, we can start just accepting people as people, not necessarily caring one way or another which gender you decide, which gender is right for you. But understanding that it's kind of strange to even be having this conversation because we're people. And when you're portraying us, we're people. Don't portray us as broken little girls. Don't portray us as a trope. We're characters, just like every other character in the book. You know, and whether that character is transgendered or that character is gay or female or male, and no matter what their ethnicity is, write people. Don't think, oh, I have to write a military woman. Think, oh, I have to write a character who is a woman and has her story and has her strengths and has her weaknesses. One of my favorite women ever written was when they switched Starbuck to being a woman.
Yeah.
See a lot of nods.
I have one too.
Which one's your favorite?
Oh, an example? Zoe from the Serenity books and Damn Fireflies.
Yeah.
She's excellent. She's my
Yeah,
favorite. She's
because
my
they
fictional
have
role model.
dimension.
Yeah.
They have love interests. They have really messed up sex lives sometimes, which is perfectly fine. They're people. But what I love is they're able to be sexual beings. They're smart. They are really good with guns. You know, and I love that aspect of the idea that you can be multidimensional. So they've proven it's doable,
Yeah.
and it's popular. Battlestar Galactica, massively popular. And anyone
Why
who says
wouldn't you wanna tell
Firefly
those
isn't
stories?
popular
Yeah.
Right.
is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've got these strong women who've proven that the character can be done, that we don't have to be all tough as nails or fainting flowers. We are multidimensional beings.
So I think there's a couple of things I wanted to state before we kind of throw it up, and I do see
We're gonna
you'll
do
be
questions right
yeah, we're gonna do questions next. The first thing was that, you know, for those of you who are writers, you know, at the end of the day, if you're thinking about these types of characters, there is so many things out there that you can use as resources, and there's so many people that you can ask that sometimes, again, as a writer, you get stuck in front of the word processor and you're just like, what do I do? I'll just write until some words come out, and then I won't, you know, I'll worry about everything else later. There are some people you can talk to. There are resources that these branches offer to make these things more realistic. And the second thing is that this is a problem that's sort of a subset of a much larger problem, but tends to be very specific lately because it's getting a lot more focus. And that's why we wanted to bring it up for you guys, especially at the con. So with that, we'll go ahead and open it up to your questions for the panel members. We have the first one right over here.
When you were talking about women military characters,
Oh, there's a microphone,
Yeah,
by the way,
there's
if
even
you
a mic,
want.
but she projects
you
really
project
well.
good, yeah. Oh, is there?
Oh,
Oh, we're trying to get for the video?
Sorry, for the video. So we do need you to take
Yeah.
the mic for the video.
We do
Sorry.
need you, sorry.
Oh, man, we're being videotaped?
I
Oh.
know, right? I didn't know until just now.
For
Whoops.
review.
Hey, I didn't curse as much as I normally do.
Thank you, sorry.
Is this on?
Yes.
Okay, relating back to women military characters who work, and I'm not really a comic person, but one of my favorite all-time characters, and I was wondering what your opinion was David Weber's Honor Harrington, if you were familiar with her at all. And does she work as a military female character, or is that more space opera, or what? Are you even familiar with her?
I'm familiar. I'm not as familiar as with some of the others, and I'd have to look into it and get back to you, but from what my other friends have said, she works pretty well. Because there's a group of us female military members that are all nerds, and so she has been brought up in conversation as one that I need to look into, and I got stuck on Saga. Sorry.
Yeah.
Who, by the way, has a very good military female in it. Anyway.
Awesome. And
There's
I think
another
we
one.
have another one. And if you want to queue up,
Snag the
we
mics.
could probably,
Yeah.
if you'd like.
Do you think it's possible that fiction could deal with the sexual assaults epidemic in the military in a respectful and non-exploitative way?
Thank you for bringing that up, because it's a little bit of a heavy topic to just throw out there. Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay. But yes, that is one of my biggest concerns, and the reason I keep doing these talks is because I think everyone's familiar with the silent war and the military sexual assault controversy that's been coming up for the last couple years, which always existed. And there was the Annapolis controversy. There's all these investigations.
It's been going on for a long time.
There was one in Australia last year. It's prevalent. It's horrible, and I wonder sometimes if the fictional portrayal of military women being hypersexualized might not have an impact on popular perception of the sexual assault controversy. I hope not. I want to give us all more credit, but I know that this is a group that selected to come to this talk, so this group isn't an example of how some other people might be perceiving the
Yeah, if
problem.
you're in this room, you're probably already 3 steps ahead.
Yeah.
But with the story...
there's one other thing,
Oh,
too.
go ahead, sorry.
I ran temporarily for a class, a blog on women in the military, and the commentary I would get was primarily from other military service members or people with an interest who wound up on a blog about military women. And the feedback that was often either leaning toward or outright stating that some of these problems and some of these sexual assault issues were from women being in the military in the first place, were from Evo
Victim
psych,
blaming.
it's just nature, and then oh, well, it's also being miscommunicated and that kind of thing. And having had a little exposure to that group and those opinions, I do think that fiction and popular perception, it's really important to handle it in a healthy way.
Yeah, and I will straight out tell you, I am a survivor of sexual assault. I have no problems explaining that. And so for me, it's a very personal topic. So whenever someone does try to write a fiction or try to handle the story, it becomes very difficult for me to separate. And so that's what I would say is, if you're going to write something like that, I think it does have the capability to help. All stories. We've been telling stories for centuries. This is what we do. Stories help us grow as a society. Stories help us remember things, and stories help us learn. I think that fiction and comic books and all of that do have the capability to bring light on this subject. But you really need to be talking to the right people and really check and make sure that you're not turning it into one of those typical women in the refrigerator's motivator.
Thank you for that.
So,
All right. Sort of going back, we were talking about earlier archetypes of female women characters in the military. So what do you think about the sort of interchangeable sort of male and female character thing, something like Mass Effect, where the character has the same story and the same plot, doesn't matter their gender? Do you think that's positive, negative? Does it
I
lose
love
something in
Mass
the
Effect.
experience?
I really like that they did that, but that's personal preference.
well,
right?
personal preference for me, the reason I liked it was because this is being recorded. This is so going to be horrible. Anyway, I like the fact that they were interchangeable because it showed that it didn't matter. It was a character. It was a well-written character, and whether its jiggly bits didn't matter. Okay? And you could seduce whoever you wanted. You could hang out with whoever you wanted. You could be gay, straight. You could have fun with aliens. Like, it did not matter. It did not matter to the core part of the story what gender the leading character was, and that in some ways was awesome. But it's also important to show the stories of these underrepresented characters. So in that case, I loved it because it showed it could be done, and it was very well done. But I also would like to see them take it a step further, because I think it's important to show that, let's be honest, women officers do go through and enlisted and spouses. Women go through different things. It's just the fact that it's the way it is. And so I'd love to see more representation, like some tweaks. I would also like to say I like the fact that FemShep's voice wasn't girly.
I think that there's room for both.
Yeah.
In a nutshell.
And we probably need more of both.
Yes.
Yes.
With no boob armor.
No boob armor.
I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of my grandmother who served in the Marine Corps, my aunts who served in the Air Force, and my fiancée who served in Afghanistan with the Marines in Iraq before she was killed. That it is awesome that we're finally having these conversations, but it's not
gonna make me
just
cry.
about this. It's also about the men that are affected, the families that are affected, the relationships that are affected. And that's one thing that has pissed me off, is when I try to talk about, yes, I dated a fellow Marine. People look at me and go, are you gay? No, we
Wow.
have female Marines.
Yeah.
And yeah, we served in this alongside each other in combat. And that's an experience that just doesn't get talked about. You see G.I. Joe, and they're like, oh, she's running on a treadmill.
heels.
Let me flirt.
In heels.
No, it doesn't work like that. So just thank you for having this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
contributing.
Thank you.
Hi, I was in the Army in the 4 years, and I've heard this a lot from a lot of male soldiers, how when females progress, that, oh, they must have slept their way up. How would you
dude,
address
we
that?
hear that
'Cause
a lot.
I've defended, like, they're better at PT than you, and me, so I don't understand where this is coming from. And
Yeah,
I was,
if you notice, those guys are cowards, and they'd never say that to our face because we could whoop their ass.
Yeah.
We hear that a lot, especially if a female Marine should happen to get something ahead of time, like meritoriously. They say, it's really common to hear, like, the whisper is got it on her knees. That's the go-to phrase.
Yep, or morale gear.
The thing is, though, I've never met an exceptional Marine or a Marine who was getting promoted on time or early who said something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's horrible that it gets said, you know. And I get the double whammy of being a girl who likes dresses, but I also am third generation, so I also get the, well, she got it because of who her daddy
Oh, the
is.
family.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
And
rough.
they don't say that about my male peers, but for me, yeah. But what's interesting is, like I said, the guys you hear saying that are the guys who are angry, jealous, and not going anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I have to say, just a tiny bit of empathy, that's all they deserve. To be not doing well in the Marine Corps is one of the most high-stress pressure cookers positions to be in. So if they lash out a little bit, I can almost understand it. They should try to get it under control, but I see where it comes from.
But guys like you who stand up for us and talk back, that's what we need more of. Because unfortunately, you get that whole fraternal thing, and everyone's just joking around, and oh, ha-ha, it's just funny. Let me tell you, the guys who are willing to go, dude, that's not cool.
yeah,
They're my heroes.
that's a little miracle.
That's awesome.
I love that.
I love when a guy stands up for us in a group of guys.
I married one of them.
Thank you.
Follow-up?
Yeah.
I had another question, more regarding, you know, we have a lot of female superheroes and such, especially military. What are your thoughts on minorities? Like, for me, obviously, it's kind of underrepresented.
Have you read Ms. Marvel yet?
No, but I should.
Oh my God, I'm so thrilled with what they're doing there. I want to see so many more minorities in general, but if we're going with the women topic, I really want to see, you know what I would have loved? End of Superman, right? End of Man of Steel. Again, don't groan, fine, got it. Don't admit you saw it. But end of Man of Steel, you know what I would love to see? I would have loved to see that general be the woman and the admiral's aide be the, or the general's aide be the guy.
Yeah, simple
You
switch.
know, why do we never see an African American female general? You know, and anyone who says, well, because there isn't one, well, there's no man who flies in tights either. So why
Man,
is it?
you just ruined my whole worldview.
There's whiskey to fix that.
All right.
But the thing is like, okay, so we're going to suspend disbelief and go for people
Right,
from
but we
Krypton,
can't do it about.
But we can't have a Thai female. My sister-in-law is Thai, and she's about to become a major, and she's on track to be probably the first Thai female general. I love that woman. She's also very, very tough. She's a badass. But why not do both?
Yeah.
Why can't we have flying superheroes and you know, female minority members, or just more minority members, not just in the infantry but in leadership positions?
Yeah. You know,
Thank
I've
you
never
very much.
had a female sergeant major who wasn't a woman of color. I think that it would honestly be an honest representation if they were to include a few. A sergeant major is the highest enlisted leader in a Marine squadron, and I've had 4 female sergeants major, and all of them were women of color. So,
Yeah, so, come on, movies, let's get it together. Anyway,
That's why we're going to keep having this panel, I think.
yeah, probably.
Well, thank you guys very much. I think we're up against,
Thank you,
close
everybody.
against our
Yep,
time.
we're on
So,
time,
thank you guys for coming out to have us get to have this discussion in front of you and your wonderful questions. And we'll be around for a few minutes afterwards.
those are excellent questions.
And
Yeah,
again,
thank you
thank
very
you
much,
guys
guys.
very much for
And no one
letting
fell
me do this again.
asleep.
Thank you.
Thank you. I love it. We need to keep doing this.